the Beast of Sicily. They called him La Belva, the Beast. Salvatore Toto Riina, small in stature, quiet voice, thick Sicilian accent, and the deadliest man Italy ever produced. Riina was born in 1930 and grew up dirt poor in Corleone, a farming village in the province of Palermo, western Sicily, already infamous for its blood feuds. By 1949, at the age of 19, he committed his first murder by killing a man during a bar argument. Riina drew a pistol and shot the guy. No remorse, no hesitation. He was convicted of murder and sentenced to 12 years, serving about 6 years before being released in 1956. Riina wanted absolute control over the Sicilian Mafia, every city, every family, every piece of power. He wanted revenge against the Palermo bosses who looked down on the Corleonesi. Between 1978 and 1983, he launched what became known as the Second Mafia War. An estimated 500 to 1,000 people were killed. Entire clans were wiped out. Car bombs exploded outside homes, ambushes on highways, executions in markets. He didn't just kill rivals, he slaughtered their wives, children, and friends. Bodies turned up in rivers, burned in cars, or were never found at all. When prosecutors like Giovanni Falcone, Paolo Borsellino, and Judge Antonino Caponetto built the Maxi trial, the most significant anti-mafia case in Italian history, based on testimonies of mafia defectors, Riina declared war on the state itself. In May 1992, he ordered Falcone's assassination. The bomb weighed 400 kilograms and was planted under the A29 motorway near Palermo. When Falcone's convoy passed, the explosion created a crater 10 meters wide. His car disintegrated. His wife, Francesca Morvillo, and 3 escort officers were torn apart instantly. 57 days later, on July 19, 1992, Riina struck again. Paolo Borsellino was blown up outside his mother's house with another car bomb. It killed him and 5 officers. That summer, Italy realized the mafia wasn't underground anymore. It was in open war. For years, he hid behind silence. But once the state spoke his name aloud, his empire began to crumble. Fear, it turned out, has an expiration date. Riina was captured on January 15, 1993, after 23 years as a fugitive, living in Palermo under a fake name, protected by corrupt networks and local blood feud. When asked about Falcone's death, he shrugged and said, "It was necessary." He died in prison in 2017 at the age of 87, at the prison hospital in Parma, unrepentant. The Iceman. If Salvatore Riina was a warlord, Richard Kuklinski was a machine. No family to lead, no soldiers to command, just a man who turned murder into a side hustle. Born in New Jersey in 1935, Kuklinski's childhood was a masterclass in cruelty. His alcoholic father's beatings were so brutal that Richard's older brother Florian didn't survive them. By his teenage years, Kuklinski was already killing stray dogs for practice. Then he upgraded to people. He once bragged that the first man he killed was a bully called Charlie Lane from his neighborhood, beaten to death with a wooden pole and dumped in the river. When no one came looking, Richard realized something terrifying. He could kill without consequence. He stopped killing for anger and started killing for profit. He realized there was money to be made in what came naturally to him, and control to be gained from the fear it created. By the 1970s, he was working as a contract killer for both the Gambino and Genovese families. They liked him because he was reliable, silent, and innovative, the kind of man who treated murder like maintenance work. He didn't just pull triggers, he experimented. Gunshots, strangulation, poison, cyanide gas sprayed from nasal inhalers. Every method was a test. He told investigators, "Sometimes I used a wrench, sometimes I used tape, sometimes I used nothing but my hands." To throw off the police, he stored bodies in industrial freezers, dumping them months later so coroners couldn't tell when they'd died, earning him the nickname, the Iceman. He claimed to have killed a man with a cyanide burger in a New York diner and also shot another in the head mid-sentence for being annoying. When a mob associate failed to pay, Kuklinski beat him with a tire iron, stuffed him in a barrel, and left it outside a motel. He returned 2 days later to check if anyone had moved it. They hadn't. Detectives later linked him to over 100 murders. He claimed 200. His only rule was simple: no women, no children. Everyone else was fair game. He even worked for Roy DeMeo, the Gambino family's most feared butcher, known for dismembering victims in his Brooklyn garage. DeMeo and Kuklinski would test new weapons together: crossbows, chainsaws, and ice picks on live victims. When DeMeo's crew got too unpredictable, Kuklinski quietly took contracts from other families instead. What made him especially terrifying was how perfectly he hid in plain sight. He lived in the suburbs of Dumont, New Jersey, in a 2-story home with his wife, Barbara Padrici, and 3 kids. He hosted barbecues. He took family photos. He went to church on Sundays. His wife thought he worked in film distribution, and in a way, he did. He distributed the final cut. At night, he kept a secret warehouse filled with weapons, guns, knives, rope, acid, and barrels for storage. He called it his workshop. He was finally caught on December 17, 1986, after Operation Iceman, a joint undercover sting by the New Jersey Attorney General's office and ATF. Dominic Polifrone, an undercover agent posing as a hitman, recorded Kuklinski casually discussing a new cyanide kill. He was arrested with cyanide spray in his car, a gun in his coat, and not a flicker of surprise on his face. During interviews from prison, he spoke about murder the way most people talk about grocery lists. "Do I feel sorry?" he said. "Sometimes, but not often." He died on March 5, 2006, at the age of 70, after 18 years behind bars, still insisting there were bodies no one would ever find. The invisible dictator. Vito Genovese didn't need to raise his voice. One word from him, and men disappeared, quietly, efficiently, and without a trace. He started as a loyal soldier under Lucky Luciano during Prohibition, smuggling liquor, running brothels, and collecting debts for the Mafia's rising empire. But Genovese wasn't built to serve anyone. He watched, waited, and learned, every ally a potential stepping stone. When Luciano was deported in 1946, Genovese made his move. He wanted the throne, and he didn't mind redecorating it in blood. By 1957, he ordered a hit on Frank Costello, the acting boss of the Luciano family. As Costello returned to his apartment lobby one evening, a gunman ambushed him and fired a single shot. The bullet grazed his skull, sending him to the ground. Costello survived, but the next day, he announced his retirement. He told reporters, "I got the message." With Costello gone, Genovese stepped into power. He began reshaping the Mafia Commission, the governing council of organized crime, turning what was meant to be a democracy into a dictatorship with himself at the center. He spoke of restoring discipline, but what he really wanted was obedience. Under his command, the family expanded into gambling, loan sharking, racketeering, and heroin trafficking. He linked New York's underworld to Italian suppliers, creating a transatlantic drug route that would later inspire the movie The French Connection. Heroin was shipped in crates of olive oil, tomato paste, and soap. From Naples to the Bronx, it moved through Genovese's hands like currency, pure, profitable, and deadly. He effectively globalized organized crime decades before cartels existed. But money alone wasn't enough. He wanted absolute control, and that required fear. One lieutenant was strangled in a parked car after hesitating to carry out an order. Another was shot in front of his wife for speaking out of turn. Bodies appeared in rivers, alleyways, and trunks, each one a warning. Even old friends weren't spared. When Willie Moretti, Genovese's longtime ally and godfather to Frank Sinatra, began talking too freely due to mental illness, Genovese allegedly had him executed. 4 gunmen walked into a New Jersey restaurant, surrounded his table, and emptied their pistols into his head. Sinatra lost his godfather, and the underworld lost any illusion of loyalty. Behind the scenes, Genovese also extended his reach overseas. During World War II, he fled to Italy to avoid prosecution for murder, where he worked under Mussolini's fascist regime as a black market profiteer. He supplied the Italian army with contraband goods, and is widely believed to have arranged the assassination of Italian anti-fascist journalist Carlo Tresca, who had insulted Mussolini. When the Allies invaded Italy, Genovese switched sides overnight. He began helping American forces root out black market rivals, pretending to be an informant. He even worked as an interpreter for U.S. military officials, until one officer recognized his name and realized he was wanted for murder back in New York. He was extradited and put on trial, but the key witness against him was found dead, shot in the head, before he could testify. Genovese walked free. In 1957, he hosted a grand summit in upstate New York, the Appalachian Meeting, where over 100 mobsters from across the U.S., Cuba, and Italy gathered to unify operations across America. It was meant to be his coronation. Instead, it became his downfall. State troopers, suspicious of all the expensive cars parked outside a rural mansion, raided the property. Gangsters ran through the woods in suits and silk shoes, dropping cash and guns as they fled. The FBI finally had proof of a nationwide criminal network, and Genovese's name was at the top. Within a year, he was arrested for heroin trafficking. Ironically, the evidence that brought him down came from a sting orchestrated by 2 men he thought he owned, Carlo Gambino and Frank Costello, who had secretly set him up. In 1959, He was sentenced to 15 years in Atlanta federal prison. At the age of 71, he died of a heart attack on February 14, 1969, but his shadow lingered. The Genovese family remains one of the most powerful mafia families in America to this day, proof that its reach outlived its pulse. There were no car bombs, no shootouts, no chaos. Genovese ruled through quiet terror, the kind that seeps into every conversation and makes men wonder if they've already said too much. Because in his world, death didn't announce itself. It just arrived, on time, without a sound. The Desert Enforcer. They called him Tony the Ant, small, sharp, and merciless. Anthony Spilotro wasn't the kind of man who made threats twice. The first time you crossed him, he warned you. The second time, you vanished. Born on May 19, 1938, in Chicago's tough West Side, Tony Spilotro was one of 6 sons in an Italian-American family that ran a small restaurant called Pat's Sandwich Shop. But the Spilotros didn't stay behind the counter for long. The neighborhood was crawling with gangsters from the Chicago outfit, and Tony quickly found that his real education came from the streets. By 16, he was expelled from Steinmetz High School. By 22, he was arrested for the murder of William Billy McCarthy, a small-time thief he had killed during a bar fight, a cold, impulsive murder that earned him his reputation for violence. Spilotro was charged with the murder, but was later acquitted due to a lack of evidence. He did serve some brief jail time on some other theft and assault charges at that time. When he got out, the Chicago outfit took notice. His childhood friend, Frank "Lefty" Rosenthal, was running mob-controlled casinos in Las Vegas. Rosenthal needed muscle, someone to protect the skimming operation that siphoned millions in untaxed cash back to Chicago. Spilotro was sent to Vegas in 1971 to keep everyone in line. On paper, he was a jeweler. As the perfect cover, he opened the Gold Rush Limited, a jewelry and gift shop at the Circus Casino. In reality, he was the mob's desert enforcer. His job was to ensure the cash pipeline from the Stardust, Fremont, Hacienda, and Marina casinos flowed without interruption. Anyone who skimmed too much, talked too freely, or got greedy paid for it, often in ways too gruesome to repeat. He preferred personal messages. Back in 1962 in Chicago, one man accused of stealing was allegedly shoved into a vice until one of his eyes popped out. Another was beaten, stabbed, and buried alive in the sand outside Vegas. Spilotro believed fear was the purest currency. But Tony's taste for power grew faster than his boss's patience. In 1978, he started branching out on his own, forming the Hole in the Wall Gang. This group of burglars was based at Bertha's Gifts and Home Furnishings, a small, nondescript store located in a mall east of the Las Vegas Strip. Their specialty was drilling through concrete walls to rob jewelry stores, pawn shops, and luxury homes. In one summer, they hit over 20 targets, leaving Vegas reeling. Spilotro was supposed to keep a low profile. Instead, he strutted through casinos, flashing gold jewelry, mouthing off to dealers, and assaulting people in public. When Frank Rosenthal survived a car bombing in 1982, an attack many suspected came from Spilotro, the FBI swarmed Vegas. The bosses back in Chicago saw the headlines, the heat, and the chaos. To them, Tony had stopped being useful. By 1986, his enemies weren't across the desert. They were in his own family. That June, Tony and his brother Michael were summoned to a meeting in Bensonville, Illinois. They expected to talk business. Instead, they were beaten to death in a basement, fists, knees, and steel pipes, until nothing was left to identify but dental records. Their bodies were stuffed into barrels and buried in a cornfield near Enos, Indiana, where a farmer's tractor uncovered them days later. The mob called it quality control, a periodic cleaning-the-house operation to maintain discipline. Tony the Ant had turned Las Vegas into a desert of bones and money. He ruled through fear, and in the end, drowned in it. The Butcher Barber. They called him Albert the Mad Hatter Anastasia, a man who didn't just order murders, he systematized them. Cold-blooded precision turned him into one of the most feared killers in American history. He didn't argue, he erased. Born Umberto Anastasio on September 26, 1902, in Tropea, Calabria, southern Italy, He grew up in a fishing family with 8 siblings and a hunger for more than poverty could offer. He arrived in Ellis Island, New York, in 1919, barely speaking English, and went to work as a longshoreman on the Brooklyn docks. But the waterfront was a war zone, and violence was the language he spoke best. By 1920, at just 18, he was charged with murdering George Torino, a fellow dock worker, during a quarrel. In 1921, he was sentenced to death, the electric chair at Sing Sing prison, but his conviction was overturned after witnesses conveniently disappeared or changed their stories. It was his first miracle escape from execution. He would have many more. During the Castellamarese War of the early 1930s, a brutal mafia civil war, Anastasia sided with Lucky Luciano and Frank Costello to overthrow the old Sicilian bosses. In return, he was made underboss of the Mangano crime family, gaining control of the New York waterfront through the International Longshoremen's Association. Dockworkers called him the Executioner. Few ever dared say it to his face. Together with Louis Lepke Buchalter, he co-founded Murder Inc., the Mafia's first organized contract-killing syndicate. They operated from the back room of a Brooklyn candy store called Midland Candy Shop. The hitmen, mostly Jewish and Italian gunmen, worked on retainer. If a boss wanted someone gone, they called Lepke or Anastasia. Between 1930 and 1940, Murder Inc. is believed to have executed between 400 and 700 people, using ice picks, ropes, and .38s to settle disputes coast to coast. Anastasia didn't just give orders, he often showed up in person. According to informant testimony, he strangled a truck driver who refused to pay tribute, and he shot a tailor because he didn't like the fit. And once, when a subordinate hesitated before carrying out an order, Anastasia grabbed the gun and did it himself. Witnesses described his rages as animalistic. On April 19, 1951, his boss, Vincent Mangano, disappeared and was never seen again. Anastasia, supported by Luciano and Costello, was immediately elevated to boss and took control of the group, which would later become the Gambino family. His power was absolute. His paranoia was worse. Anyone suspected of disloyalty vanished, their bodies turning up days later in the East River, or never at all. But his impulsiveness made enemies. He began authorizing unsanctioned hits, random dress store murders, killing civilians for disrespect. When his ally Frank Costello was nearly killed in an attack ordered by Vito Genovese, Lucky Luciano's underboss, Anastasia found himself blamed by association. His underboss, Carlo Gambino, calm where Anastasia was volatile and ready to align his family under Genovese's control in exchange for support, began plotting his overthrow with Vito Genovese. On October 25, 1957, Anastasia walked into the Park Sheraton Hotel barbershop on 56th Street in Manhattan, his usual spot. As the barber draped a hot towel across his face, 2 men in trench coats and scarves entered. Without a word, they opened fire. 5 bullets tore through him. In his final moments, Anastasia rose, lunging toward his reflection in the mirror, believing his killer was still there. The glass shattered. He collapsed onto the floor, tangled in the barber's chair, blood pooling beneath the white sheet. The gunmen escaped into the mourning crowd. They were never identified. Some believe one of them was Crazy Joe Gallo, but no charges were ever filed. The hit sent shockwaves through New York. It was the first time a major mafia boss had been executed in public, not in the shadows, but in broad daylight, in a midtown barbershop. Newspapers splashed the photo of his blood-stained chair across the front page. It became an enduring mafia symbol. Albert Anastasia, the man who built a business on death, died exactly as he lived, quick, ruthless, and theatrical. The Dapper Don, they called him the Dapper Don, immaculately dressed, with a diamond pinky ring, a silk tie, and a smile that could charm a jury. But behind the grin was John Gotti, the man who turned murder into a media brand. Born October 27, 1940 in the Bronx, Gotti was the 5th of 13 children in a poor Italian-American family. His father, John Joseph Gotti Sr., was a day laborer who rarely worked. Young John learned early that power got you paid faster than patience. By 12, he was running errands for mobsters. By 16, He was stealing trucks off the Brooklyn docks. He joined the Gambino crime family under Carmine Fatico, a capo who saw potential in Gotti's boldness and temper. But it was Gotti's ruthlessness that set him apart. In 1968, he was convicted of truck hijacking and served 3 years in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, federal prison. Afterward, he went back to work as a made man, this time as a soldier for Agnello Della Croce, the Gambino underboss who became Gotti's mentor and protector. In 1973, Gotti committed his first sanctioned murder, James McBratney, the man who kidnapped and killed Carlo Gambino's nephew. Gotti walked into a Staten Island bar posing as a cop, shot McBratney 3 times, and walked out. It was his first taste of mafia justice. Fast, personal, final. He was arrested, pleaded guilty to manslaughter, served 4 years, and was paroled in 1977. By the early 1980s, Gotti was running the Bergen Hunt and Fish Club in Ozone Park, Queens, part headquarters, part fortress. He wore $2,000 suits and diamond cufflinks, and drove a Lincoln Continental that never had dirt on the tires. But while he smiled for the cameras, he plotted his way to the top. His boss, Paul Castellano, was a businessman, not a street fighter. Castellano's quiet corporate style clashed with Gotti's ego. When Castellano failed to attend Della Croce's funeral in 1985, Gotti took it as an insult and an opportunity. On December 16, 1985, outside Sparks Steakhouse in Midtown Manhattan, Castellano stepped out of his car. Before he could reach the door, 4 gunmen in trench coats opened fire. Dozens of witnesses saw the daylight execution. Castellano and his driver, Thomas Bellotti, crumpled to the sidewalk. The killers were never legally identified, but everyone in New York knew who had ordered it, and everyone knew not to ask. Gotti became boss of the Gambino family, the most powerful crime syndicate in America. He ruled from the Ravenite Social Club in Little Italy, holding court in tailored suits, flashing smiles to the press. He was charming, quotable, and untouchable, earning the nickname the Teflon Don after 3 separate trials in the late 1980s ended in acquittals. But beneath the style was savagery. He ordered hits on rivals, informants, and even his own men. His underboss Salvatore, Sammy the Bull Gravano, once said, "He'd kill you for making him wait 5 minutes." Gotti's obsession with fame became his undoing. He couldn't stay quiet. The FBI planted bugs in his club and recorded him bragging about murders and mocking his crew. In 1992, those tapes surfaced in court. Gravano flipped, testifying against him in exchange for a reduced sentence. On April 2nd came the verdict. Guilty on all counts, including 5 murders, racketeering, and obstruction of justice. On June 23rd, Gotti was sentenced to life plus 5 years without parole at Marion Federal Penitentiary in Illinois. Even behind bars, he carried himself like royalty. He got haircuts twice a week, signed autographs for guards, and gave interviews denying he'd ever been in the Mafia. But cancer doesn't play by mob rules. On June 10, 2002, John Gotti died of throat cancer at age 61, locked in solitary confinement. He was buried at St. John's Cemetery in Queens. The man who loved the spotlight left in silence. His empire crumbled, his family scattered, and his legend turned myth. The Dapper Don had lived for power, respect, and headlines, and in the end, he got all 3. The Opium King. Khun ruled from the jungles of Myanmar like a feudal lord, commanding an army of nearly 20,000 soldiers. His caravans hauled hundreds of tons of opium through the Golden Triangle, feeding a heroin empire that dominated the 1980s. Hidden jungle refineries turned the crop into cash, and military officials were paid to look the other way. When rival tribes resisted, his Mong Thai army crushed them with artillery fire. The U.S. put a $2 million bounty on his capture, but he was untouchable. In 1996, he made a deal with the Myanmar government, surrendered, and retired in luxury, investing in hotels and construction. He died peacefully in 2007, a warlord turned businessman. Khun proved that in Southeast Asia, drugs could build kingdoms, and even buy forgiveness. The Tunnel King. El Chapo Guzmán turned Mexico's earth into a maze of multi-million-dollar tunnels. Each one had lighting, ventilation, and rails to push carts loaded with cocaine, meth, and heroin beneath the U.S. border. His Sinaloa cartel moved hundreds of tons a year. An empire worth billions. He bribed everyone from city mayors to generals. One witness later claimed he handed a $100 million bribe to Mexico's president, a charge both denied. When rivals challenged him, he left their bodies hanging from bridges as warnings. Even from prison, he ruled. In 2001, he escaped in a laundry cart. In 2015, he did it again. Through a mile-long tunnel dug directly beneath his shower. His cruelty matched his wealth. Private zoos, fleets of armored SUVs, and towns that treated him like royalty. Now locked away in America's harshest supermax, El Chapo rules nothing except legend. The American Gangster. Frank Lucas turned 1970s Harlem into a heroin gold rush. While others bought from the Italian mob, Lucas went straight to the source, the Golden Triangle of Southeast Asia. There, amid the Vietnam War, he struck deals with corrupt soldiers to buy near-pure heroin for pennies. He later claimed it was shipped home on U.S. military flights, even hidden in the coffins of fallen soldiers, a story agents never proved, but one that made him infamous. His brand, Blue Magic, was almost 100% pure and flooded New York with addiction. At his peak, he made up to $1 million a week, owning mansions, racehorses, and a fur coat worth more than a car. He ruled through fear. Dealers who crossed him vanished. In 1975, agents raided his home and found $500,000 in cash. Facing a 70-year sentence, he flipped, helping expose dozens of corrupt cops. He died in 2019, a legend of Harlem's darkest empire, a man who built his fortune on pure powder and pure myth. The brain of the Russian Mafia. Semion Mogilevich doesn't run street dealers. He runs systems. Born in Kiev in 1946, he built a criminal empire that reached across Europe and the U.S., moving fortunes through banks, oil deals, and weapons trades. Fluent in finance, he laundered cartel and mob money through shell companies and stock scams worth billions. Western intelligence agencies allege he had ties to heroin routes from Afghanistan and synthetic drug labs in Eastern Europe. Protected by lawyers, politicians, and multiple passports, he became untouchable. The FBI once called him the most dangerous criminal you've never heard of. While other kingpins died in gunfire, Mogilevich dines in Moscow's luxury restaurants. The mind that proved intellect can be deadlier than violence. Lord of the Skies. Amado Carrillo Fuentes treated cocaine like cargo. He built a private air force, more than 30 aircraft including Boeing 727s, and turned the sky into his highway. His Juarez cartel ferried tons of cocaine from Colombia to Mexico, using secret airstrips and even mid-air refueling to stay invisible. He amassed billions, some say as much as $25 billion, and built mansions with bulletproof glass, gold fixtures, and underground bunkers. His pilots wore Rolexes, his soldiers carried rocket launchers. But the higher he flew, the more paranoid he became. Hunted by rivals and the DEA, Carrillo tried to change his face with plastic surgery in 1997. He died on the table, his heart giving out mid-operation. Days later, the surgeons who operated on him were found encased in concrete barrels. Even for the Lord of the Skies, there was no escape from gravity. The Ghost Billionaire. While El Chapo grabbed headlines, Ismael El Mayo Zambada built the quieter half of the Sinaloa Empire, the side that never fell. For over 40 years, he's orchestrated trafficking routes spanning 3 continents, moving meth, cocaine, and fentanyl through tunnels, container ships, and private jets. With an estimated fortune rivaling El Chapo's, he's never spent a night behind bars. He's long been accused of influencing politicians through bribes and silence, his real weapon. Those who betray him vanish without a trace. When his own son was arrested, El Mayo didn't retaliate. He simply vanished into the Sierra Madre Mountains, sending orders through satellite phones. No social media, no ego, no trail. In a world of flashy narcos, El Mayo proved the deadliest thing a man can be: invisible. The Cocaine Godmother. Griselda Blanco Restrepo was both elegant and lethal, the woman who helped invent modern cocaine smuggling. In the 1970s, her operation moved thousands of kilos a month from Medellin to Miami. She hid the drugs in bras, wigs, and baby strollers, building a billion-dollar pipeline disguised as motherhood. Her cruelty was legendary. She ordered hits at playgrounds, restaurants, even near Disney World. Rivals were gunned down in daylight. Lovers died when they defied her. At her peak, she made tens of millions a month, some say up to $80 million. Her Miami mansions glittered with gold and diamonds, but the streets ran red with her revenge. Arrested in the 1980s, she served nearly 2 decades before being deported, only to be shot in the head outside a butcher shop in Medellin. Blanco proved a woman could rule the drug trade, with more blood than mercy. The godfather of cartels. Before Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, nicknamed El Padrino, Mexico's traffickers were small-time smugglers. Gallardo unified them. A former cop and bodyguard to a state governor, he used political connections to create the Plaza system, a network where each region paid him a tax to move drugs north. His Guadalajara cartel partnered with Escobar's, ferrying Colombian cocaine through Mexico into the U.S. He ran it like a Fortune 500 company. Board meetings, ledgers, and a payroll rumored to reach all the way to senators. Worth an estimated $500 million, he lived behind marble walls and hosted governors at his parties. But after the 1985 murder of DEA agent Enrique Kiki Camarena, the U.S. closed in. Arrested in 1989, Gallardo's empire was shattered, giving birth to the Tijuana, Juarez, and Sinaloa cartels. He wasn't just rich, he wrote Mexico's drug war blueprint. China's meth magnate. Zhenli Yegon turned chemistry into a crime empire. A Chinese-Mexican businessman, he imported the precursor chemicals that fed Mexico's biggest meth labs, supplying cartels across the country. In 2007, police raided his Mexico City mansion and found $205 million in cash, stacked floor to ceiling, the largest drug-related cash seizure in history. His company, Unimed Pharmchem, moved enough pseudoephedrine to make billions of dollars worth of meth. When arrested, he claimed, "I was told to keep the money for the government," a defense that fell flat. His empire fused corporate logistics with cartel ambition, marking the dawn of a new era in drug trafficking, where labs replaced jungles and chemists replaced killers. The dawn of Bombay. From the slums of Mumbai, Dawood Ibrahim Kaskar built D Company, a multinational crime syndicate dealing in drugs, weapons, and terror financing. By the 1980s, he dominated much of South Asia's heroin trade, smuggling product through shipping routes into the Gulf. He made hundreds of millions laundering money through Dubai real estate and Karachi front companies. But Dawood's cruelty was political. He has been accused of financing assassinations, arms deals, and the 1993 Bombay bombings that killed over 250 people. Interpol lists him among the world's most wanted, and he remains sanctioned by the US and the UN. He is believed to live freely in Pakistan, under alleged government protection, a claim Pakistan denies. Dawood Ibrahim isn't just a drug lord. He's proof that organized crime can wear a diplomat suit. The billion-dollar terrorist, Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria, didn't just sell cocaine, he industrialized it. By the early 1980s, his Medellin cartel controlled nearly 80% of the world's supply. Planes left Colombia daily for Miami and the Caribbean, packed with bricks of white powder sealed in tires, coffins, and fuel tanks. Submarines and jungle airstrips kept the river of cocaine flowing non-stop. Escobar reportedly earned up to $420 million a week, stacking so much cash that rats ate $2 billion a year. His cruelty was legendary. He ordered judges, journalists, and entire police units assassinated. When a justice minister tried to expose him, Escobar had him gunned down in his car. His motto, plata o plomo, silver or lead, meant take the bribe or take the bullet. Yet he built homes and schools for the poor, who called him a saint. In 1993, cornered on a Medellin rooftop, he was shot through the ear, barefoot, smiling, still the richest outlaw who ever lived. El Mexicano. Escobar's partner, Jose Gonzalo Rodriguez Gacha, known as El Mexicano, earned his nickname for his obsession with mariachi music and cowboy culture, but there was nothing romantic about him. He helped turn the Medellin cartel into a war machine, building private armies and death squads that executed anyone who crossed him. His roots ran through Panama and Mexico, using planes and livestock shipments as cover to move tons of cocaine north. Worth billions, he built ranches filled with exotic animals and gold-plated weapons. In 1989, surrounded by Colombian troops, he fought until his gun clicked empty and was cut down by machine gun fire. His bodyguards died standing over him. Gacha's violence was so ruthless, even Escobar kept his distance. This mystery may be over, but the next one will keep you up at night. Watch now.